Aquí se ha manipulado información, se ha mentido deliberadamente y es eso lo que venimos a aclarar hoy día, que esto no es como se ha dicho ni es como se ha mostrado.
¿Usted sigue manteniendo su inocencia, Martín?
Completamente. Yo sigo manteniendo que soy inocente.
Have you ever wondered what drives someone to commit an unthinkable crime? What pushes an ordinary day into a nightmare that haunts a nation? On a quiet night in 2013, in the picturesque landscapes of Chile, a young woman named Antonio Barra was brutally taken from this world. But this wasn't just any crime. It was a meticulously planned and chillingly executed murder that left an indelible mark on everyone who heard about it. For Antonio Barra, a vacation that started off horribly ended up into a nightmare. Without a question, the mind and body are both negatively affected by alcohol, particularly when used in excess. Even more importantly, those who are really drunk are incredibly susceptible to harm. Women are more vulnerable to ending up victims of thieves, scammers, rapists, and killers due to their heightened susceptibility. Perpetrators sometimes try to rationalize their acts by blaming the victim or claiming drunkenness, which is the worst part. It is common for victims of this kind of assault to choose not to speak out. Some people were able to overcome their trauma and sorrow on their own, while others found it too much to endure. Antonio Ibarra's heartbreaking tale shows how a guy who broke the lives of several young ladies may escape punishment. It is a graphic example of the terrible effects of social shame and silence. This case paved the way for changes to the criminal justice system that had previously given rapists a pass. As a result of the outcry, the public was able to see a violent offender taken off the streets for good, sparing other people from harm. On December 3rd, Antonia Maria Barra came into our world 1999 in Temuco, the Chilean administrative hub of the same-name district. Alejandro and Marcelo Barra had 5 children, and she was the youngest. The family was well off. 2 elder brothers, Sebastian and Ignacio, and 2 sisters made up Antonia's childhood, Carla and Catalina. She was most intimate and candid with Catalina, with whom she had the deepest feelings of friendship and trust. The parents took an active interest in their children's schooling and personal growth. They excelled in athletics and music, and upon graduating from high school, they attended famous universities. Since he was the youngest, Antonio's parents showered her with extra care and affection. Regardless, she was a brilliant student who wanted to work in the tourist sector and see the globe. On social media in 2015, Antonia met a guy called Martin Paradinas when she was 15 years old. He also resided in that city. Before we go deeper into this gripping tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. We really appreciate it. Martin, who lived close by Antonia's house, was 8 years Antonia's older, had a kid of his own, and was divorced when they met. To save embarrassment and any possible consequences, he wed a student who got pregnant by him. Yet, not long after the baby was born, the parents' marriage ended. Between 2015 and 2017, Martin and Antonia interacted only as friends based on their social media engagements, suggesting that they knew one another personally. Their connection came to a halt when Antonia relocated to a different city after finishing high school and beginning university, uncovered new interests, made new acquaintances, and stopped worrying about Tonia and Martin. Only visited her homeland on holidays and vacations, but maintained close contact with her family back home. They were almost inseparable after becoming best friends in university when she met Consuela. A fellow student called Rodrigo Aguado and her started dating, and they were together for around a year. The two of them got into an argument in September 2019 at the beginning of the new semester and ultimately decided to take a break. Tony has been looking for a method to relax and take her mind off of her problems after the split. She was looking forward to the upcoming Chilean national holiday, the long weekend, and all the festivities she could attend. The charming hamlet of Pekin was the site of an electronic music festival, which Antonia and her closest friend chose to attend. Along with 3 other pals from university, they were driven there in Consuela's vehicle. A summer cottage in Pucón was their lodging. Even though the house's owners were out of town, they graciously gave it to Antonia and her companion, who were close friends of the Barra family, announcing the location of the spare key to them. The 2 friends arrived, left their buddies behind, and promptly made themselves at home in the spacious and inviting mansion, intending to spend the entire weekend there. Antonia and Martine had a chance encounter on the night of September 18th while strolling around town, and they struck up a conversation. Martin and his pals were sleeping in a huge leased home a few miles outside of the city center, and it turned out that they had also come to the festival. After a nice conversation, they decided to meet up at a prominent nightclub the next day for a party. Antonia told her parents about her intentions over the phone, and her dad warned her to drink alcohol with caution and to act wisely. Antonia told him it would be okay and laughed it off. Before going to the club the following evening, friends spent a good chunk of time the day before picking out their party attire and applying their cosmetics. Their anticipation for a nice night out was palpable before they set off. 1 bottle of wine each was consumed in their company before hailing a cab to the nightclub. The females arrived, grabbed a bottle of champagne from the bar, and then hit the dance floor. Arriving at the club after midnight, Martine and his buddies discovered an already very drunk Antonia. They kept on drinking and dancing even though they were drunk. Consuela claims that she attempted to talk her friend Antonia out of drinking, but that her friend ignored her. Antonia slipped their minds at one time, so they set out to find her. After waiting half an hour, they discovered her in a different room with Martine. Antonia was almost unconscious from the effects of her intoxication. Benjamin Morales and his classmate were recruited by Consuela to bring Antonia home, but Antonia started to fight back, saying that she wouldn't go just yet as the night was young. Her pals took her out of the house when she began to feel sick after just a short while. Step outside for a little fresh air. Regardless, Antonia was adamant about going back to the club. Antonia was approached by Consuela once again as the night progressed, who expressed her weariness and want to return home. They should go together, she said. But Antonia did not budge from her decision to remain at the club. Realizing there was no chance of getting Antonia to go, Consuela continued to have fun when she left the club. After hailing a cab, she made her way home, where she promptly went to bed. At around 6 o'clock in the morning, however, the celebration turned gloomy. Benjamin saw Antonia being led out of the club by Martine, who had her gripped firmly as she trembled. Antonia was bewildered, which Benjamin observed, and Martine took advantage of her. Since Antonia was nauseous, they waited outside the door for a bit, hoping she would feel better. Despite Martinez's illness, friends soon came over and proposed that they keep the party going in their leased property. Despite their limited understanding of their surroundings, Antonia and Martine chose to walk. As they walked, the cameras caught Martine guiding an obviously drunk Antonia, who fought to get free of his arms. As they continued on their journey, Martine stopped at a 24-hour shop to buy alcohol. There was complete silence in the shop as he tried to kiss Antonia. She rejected him and turned away, her discomfort evident. Antonia felt trapped and powerless, yet she couldn't escape or fight back. By around 8 in the morning, Martinez's authority had taken hold, and he had persisted in guiding her. They pulled up to the leased home. All of the guests in the living room could see Antonia was upset, but she was too drunk to say anything. Martine continued to embrace her and try to plant a kiss on her lips. None of the other buddies tried to step in since they were all equally drunk. Martine attacked the bewildered and shocked Antonia shortly after the pair went to one of the bedrooms. Martine ignored her cries for help and continued to pursue him anyhow. While Antonia stayed in her bedroom, Martine and his pals continued their partying in the living area after the attack. She pleaded with Benjamin to drive her home when she contacted him at around 9 in the morning. Benjamin had difficulty understanding her cries because of her drunkenness. Unable to articulate what was occurring or why she was worried, the girl sobbed uncontrollably and spoke in a muddled manner. With the implication that Antonia was in a bind and might use some assistance, Benjamin contacted Consuela to fill her in on the situation. Benjamin contacted Tanya, and despite their language barrier, Consuelo was able to deduce her whereabouts. When she arrived, she wasted no time in racing to her friend's rescue. Martine was challenged by Consuela, who demanded to know his actions. Martine only grinned and said that it was all voluntary. As Consuela entered one of the rooms, she discovered her companion in a terrifying situation. Antonia begged to be removed from that place immediately while sobbing. Seeing her pal in such a state of misery continued to strengthen Consuela's resolve to rescue Antonia. Arriving home a few minutes later, Antonia jumped in the shower despite Consuela's warnings not to wash away the evidence and Antonia's insistence that nobody should ever know what had occurred. Consuela also wanted Antonia to contact the police immediately. Antonia contacted her parents later that afternoon, attempting to conceal any indication that anything was amiss. She and her companions returned to the hostel the next day, when Antonia was engulfed in despair, bullied, and an overwhelming need to escape. She wished the nightmare would go away, have tried to go on with life as before after falling here. Consuela was the only one who could read her thoughts as she persisted in going to class and talking to her friends. She was so worried that if she told anybody what had occurred, they would find out about her bargain that she flat out rejected the notion of going to the police. However, gossip quickly propagated tales that were enriched with personal information. People pointed, murmured, and laughed behind Antonia's back, which made her feel even more alone. A particularly nasty event happened when a classmate publicly challenged her. Investigating the veracity of the reports, Antonia was dealt a crushing blow when her ex-boyfriend Rodrigo, with whom she continued to carry sentiments and a desire for reconciliation, called her. In a devastating phone conversation, Aguado laid out all the nasty allegations that had gotten to him and said he didn't want to see Antonia again, ending any possibility of reconciliation. Antonia tried to clarify that what occurred constituted an attack, but Aguado rudely rejected her, insulted her, and ended the conversation suddenly, even though she was crying. Antonia was hit so hard by this chat on Saturday, October 12th, that he thought she would never get over it. The year 2019. Antonia adamantly maintained that everything was all right, but Antony's relatives saw the sorrow in her eyes and took refuge in her parents' home, seeking the consolation of family. Later that night, she shared a number of photos from her youth on her social media page, along with a heartbreaking and depressing caption. Notification following supper with relatives, Antonia went upstairs to her room and stayed there. Her sister Catalina, with whom she had an unbreakable tie, came to see how she was doing around an hour after that. After begging to be left alone, Antonia turned off the light and said she wanted to sleep. Catalina exited the room at her sister's request, telling her how much she loved her. After waiting a few hours, Marcela, who was their mother, came to Antonia's room to tell her that supper was ready. There was no answer to the woman's persistent knocks on the door. Assuming Antonia was fast sleeping, she walked inside the room. It wasn't until she felt Antonia's dead body that she understood her mistake. The whole house hurried to the room where Marcela had shouted, and an ambulance was quickly sent. Without delay, and efforts were made to revive Antonia before the arrival of medical personnel. Their unfortunate efforts failed miserably. Antonia had accidentally overdosed on sleeping medication and committed suicide. Since many people in the neighborhood were ignorant of Antonia's profound mental anguish, the announcement created shockwaves. Was experiencing. The news devastated her loved ones, and they wasted no time in seeking justice on her behalf. They began to piece together what happened in the hours leading up to their daughter's death after her bar appearance with her classmates and friends. The poisonous atmosphere Antonia had been a part of was brought to light by the stories and gossip that were going about, and they were horrified by it. Consuela spoke out, telling everyone everything she knew about what had happened. But the parents thought we should do more. To assist piece together what happened and find the evidence needed to prosecute the criminal, they decided to hire the city's leading private investigator. Additionally, Alejandro decided to bring attention to the matter. He took use of his connections to set up a news conference, where he spoke before hundreds of cameras and said that his daughter had been tormented and assaulted to the extent that she took her own life, with the abuser still at large. Important findings emerged from the detective's investigation. With the help of numerous witnesses, including Consuela, Benjamin, and a handful of other students from their university, who were ready to testify in court, he was able to put together the events of that tragic night. After gathering all the necessary evidence, the family bar sought legal recourse. The police wanted to punish Martín for his acts by arresting him, but they didn't have enough evidence to do so. While recognizing their drunkenness, Martín said the meeting had been voluntary. On top of that, Antonia had kept quiet about the event with the authorities. While Martin was out on bond, he and his loved ones quickly filed a countersuit against the family law firm, claiming that its members had committed acts of harassment, defamation, and unlawful publication of sensitive information. In reaction to these charges, they claimed that Martin's bar of relatives had slandered him and damaged his honor and reputation. In order to publicly defend themselves, the Barr family chose to arrange a news conference. They said that their daughter had been the one whose dignity and reputation had been ruined, and that Martin was the one who had done it, not injured her. The legal struggle heated up as the parties involved vowed to prove their points in front of the public. According to Martin and his family, the Barra family exposed their home location, phone numbers, and social media accounts to the public, which prompted constant insults and anonymous death threats. They insisted that Martinez was innocent until proved guilty and that everyone involved had freely agreed to everything. Members of his family have publicly stated their intention to defend him in court. Unexpectedly, to the family's bar. Following the statement, the police took the side of Martin and his family, which caused Antonio's relatives to stop talking trash about them and disclosing personal information. This abrupt shift in loyalty was a major setback for the family tavern. With Antonia's case receiving so much media attention, they persisted in their quest for justice despite this setback. 8 other girls reported becoming victims of Martin's harassment and assault within a month. For fear of ridicule and judgment, they had stayed quiet. As other victims came forward, including a girl who was only 13 years old when she was assaulted, the prevailing culture of victim blaming and survivors' unwillingness to speak up were brought to light. In June 2020, Martin was apprehended at long last. He was taken into custody and subsequently imprisoned to Moscow City Prison on charges of assaults that allegedly occurred between 2011 and 2019. If true crime keeps you hooked, subscribe and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we drop our next case. But Martinez was freed on his own recognizance to remain in the country while the inquiry was underway less than a month after his lawyer had successfully negotiated his release. In addition, the statute of limitations for the offenses meant that many claims brought by the wounded girls were dismissed. A substantial likelihood of their being disregarded or ignored resulted from this. The search of justice for Martinez became even more complicated when the court only recorded 2 cases out of 8 appeals. The public was outraged when Martin was released from detention and the victims' claims were rejected. Protests and marches drew thousands of people nationwide as they sought justice. The prosecutor's office demanded a new trial for Martinez after public pressure prompted them to launch an investigation into the matter. All charges of violence perpetrated by Martin had the statute of limitations vacated at the same time. In February 2021, the trial began, and Martinez's social media posts were made public. He indicted himself even more by bragging about his deeds in these communications he sent to his buddies. The fact that Martin had kept his victims' underpants as souvenirs at home came to light. The collection is unsettling. Some of the victims' underwear, including Antonia's, was among the things discovered. They had already appealed to the court. As a result, Martin faced 9 charges related to crimes against sexual integrity. 3 of his victims were minors. Were the bars to react to these changes? Calls on the public to speak out against violence and do their part to hold perpetrators accountable were reiterated. A fresh trial was ordered in Martin's case by the Supreme Court on December 29. The public defense team took up his case in March of 2023. He entered a new not guilty plea. They drank a lot of alcohol together, which contributed to everything that transpired with Antonia. But Martin was found guilty again on July 7, 2023. After taking into consideration the 3 years he had previously served in jail, his original 20-year sentence was lowered to 17 years. Thus, he possessed 14. There are still years to go. In a formal press statement, Antonio's father voiced the family's displeasure with the decision. No amount of punishment would ever make their daughter and sister return to them, it was stressed. Public personalities were contacted by victims of Martin's acts, including Antonio Barra's family, throughout the court processes. Promote equality for women. They worked together to revise the criminal code, including new charges related to entertainment. Victims of sexual assault and harassment were their primary focus. The Antonio Barra law was an effort to broaden the definition of intimate partner crime and increase the maximum penalty for those responsible for a victim's unlived. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.